Hello everybody, guten Tag. Thanks for coming to my session. Today's talk is going to be about Scatter Spider. So it's a deja vu with Scatter Spider. We've seen this group before, and we're going to see if your SaaS doors are still unlocked. Now, we're going to talk also about Looker 3. You guys might wonder who is Looker 3. Now, us at Permiso, we call them Looker 3. You probably know them better as Scatter Spider. Microsoft folks call them as Storm 0875 or Mandiant, they call them UNC 3944. So we have various names for these threat actors, and that's fine because not everybody has the same intel, and we always do the engagements kind of different. So when I talk about Looker 3, we're going to know that we are referring to Scatter Spider. Here's how we are going to spend the best 30 minutes of your life. We're going to start with an introduction about me. We're going to just deep dive into who Looker 3 is actually, who are the personas behind these groups. We're going to just deep dive on the modern cloud attacks that they are using. We're going to explore new TTPs, and if we have time, we're just going to do a quick screenshot about hunting these guys with Cloud Grappler, which is on our own open source tool. Quick introduction about me, the most fun stuff. My name is Andi Ahmeti. I'm from Kosovo. I'm a threat researcher at a US-based company called Permiso Security. And for the last 3 years, we've been dealing with these guys, Looker 3, Scatter Spiders, Shiny Hunters, you can name them. And it's been a real pleasure just seeing how they attack and how they evolve. During this time, I've also managed to develop an open source 3 frameworks. You can see the links down at the bottom, and most of them are defensive frameworks, so you can to help the community and find the presence of these bad guys in your environments. This talk, obviously, or this research was done with my fellow colleague Abian Morina. He is a fellow researcher at Permiso as well, but he couldn't make it because he has a master exam, so we wish good luck to him. Okay, let's just talk. Who is Looker 3? Now, attribution here is really tough. And the reason why is how loosely connected these guys are. They are spread everywhere. Now, even big CTI teams like Mandiant, Microsoft, CrowdStrike are actually starting to track them at the persona level, just because, again, how loosely they are, and attribution to this group or labeling this group is kind of tough. Now, why? These guys like to take credits for others' attack. Like if you take an example, Shiny Hunters versus Scatter Spider. If you go on the deep forum and ask them, oh, guys, are you the same? They will say, okay, yeah, we're in the same group. But are you out to believe the threat actors saying that they are in the same group? I would not. Now, even though we might have some member overlaps between these two groups, but it's just not that simple. So, if you look on the left side, I have listed some of the arrests that were made with people connected to this group, to Looker 3, so Scatter Spider. And they were done last year, some of them during this year. But does that mean that the attack have stopped? Probably we've seen a pause on their attacks, but historically they're known to bounce back, and they did in 2025. So again, even arresting these attackers, it just shows how many members are and how decentralized they are. Now, let's talk, who are they? They're mostly loose teenagers, really good English speakers. I'm going to show later on slides why. And their main motivation remains money. But cloud also plays a big role. So unlike most threat actors, when they do an attack, they just go in the shadow. They don't like to be public. Now these guys like to be loud, and they just want to be seen by their peers or by the security community. And it's something which makes them really stand out. Now again, what sets them apart is their approach. They usually start the initial access through the doing identity takeover or social engineering impersonation to get access. Then they will move laterally in your internal tools, just searching. We're going to go down on the SaaS reconnaissance, but they also move strategically through industries. Now, How they do it is they choose a vertical of security and they go hard on that. They finish that part, they go into the next one. So they usually started with telecoms, they moved on to large software tech firms, retail, airlines, and we're going to speak later on. But again, why does Scatter Spider get so much attention? It's because how loud and aggressive they are. So they're not just after the money, they want to be seen and they want recognition. Next, let's just do a recap of previous intrusions before we get into what their attack looks now. So on the right side, there's a flow chart of a previous engagement we had with our customer, and that was roughly 2 years ago. If you look at it, you can see that there are more than 5 layers, and this attack spread roughly for 72 hours. So speed is a typical thing for these guys. Now, again, they usually start with the IDP, so identity-based access. From there, they will do rapid reconnaissance on the SaaS layer. So they will go into your Slack, in your Teams, or Jira ticketing system. They don't care about the product names. They don't care what you use internally. Yet they will use that for their own leverage to get to their mission as soon as possible. Now, their goal is to map who does what, and they just wanted to know more about the process communication between your team members. And let's say if they are targeting, they want to get the source code of your company, they will likely target a dev identity. Once they do that, they will use your SaaS layer to get to know more about how things are going and who are people involved. Again, the mission of these guys kind of depends on who the target is. Now, if I'm going after a large software firm, what I'm going to get money for? Probably the source code. Okay, let's go after that. If I'm going after the gaming industry, their main mission could be disruption of service, so people cannot go into the casinos, cannot play them, and they're going to get the most money out of that using extortion. So again, whatever your industry is, or whatever your crown jewelers are, they will come after that and grab that part. Okay, enough of the old stuff. Let's just see what's new. Even though the first part is not new now, it has been something on the first 6 months of 2025, but they switched going after retail, insurance, and airlines. Now, when we are talking about targeting these industries, it's not stealing data as much as it matters as disruption of service. Of course, credential theft has always been a component of their attack. But let's say if I'm going after retail, I'm going to probably get more money out of extortion of disruption of service. So they will just shut down their registers so they cannot do the normal transaction as a retail company would. And at the end, of course, they will do some data theft. Why not? Let's get more money out of it. So the disruption of service for a retail company will probably be more damaging, and they're going to get most money extorting that part. One thing that has been really interesting is that now they're going directly to the help desk social engineering. So that's their way of initial access. Of course, phishing is always prevalent. They will always continue to do that, and most threat actors. But on our recent engagement, calling the help desk directly to get initial access was their way to go to. Now, another interesting fact of this is that now they are targeting your CFO first. And that's really interesting. We haven't been able to actually solve this puzzle. Why are they going after your CFO? It can be probably because CFO is a really well-connected person, or they're trying to do some, fraud wire transfers. But if that doesn't work out, they will target your IT admins or whoever has the most privilege to carry out their mission. And again, I would expect them to go after that because they will need those privileges to finish their mission. What is that mission? On the most recent cases, is to get on-prem as fast as possible. Now that might sound funny because going on-prem has always been a component of what these guys will do. They will go out on-prem and do some ransomware deployment to get some money. But on the recent cases, ransomware deployment has been how to say, an after-the-act thing. So they will complete their mission, they will do disruption of service, and say, okay, why not, let's do a ransomware deployment and get some more money for that. So as soon as they got through the IDP layer, they will check for any reference to how to get on-prem. And how do you do that? Let's say you have a SharePoint file which you shared with all your employees or your developers or your security team. Say, okay, in order to get on-prem on your domain controllers or any virtualization that you're doing, okay, here you have a SharePoint doc, or I'm just going to message that through your Slack, a PowerPoint or Microsoft Word document, just highlighting how you can get on-prem. And most of the cases, they also attach the credentials over there. So these guys know and say, okay, let's use your SaaS, your internal tools, to know how to get on-prem. We're going to be talking later on slides about how they're doing the on-prem pivot, but that's just a high-level thing. And they're using the VPN, but most of the recent cases is using the Azure Virtual Desktop to actually go or access the on-prem site. On the ASN side, there used to be a really good time where, while doing threat hunting, as soon as you saw a logging or some activity using the Malvet VPN or residential IP proxy, say, okay, let's just roll up my sleeves. I know I'm going to find something juicy in here because these guys were using Malware. And, but that was a while back ago. So they're not doing that anymore. What they're doing it, or on our recent engagements, is that they're actually using these ESNs. If you are a SOC analyst or just general in security or threat hunting and you see those ESNs, you will say, okay, this is not good. And the reason why is that it's what everybody's on. Like, there are some really common cellular ASNs, so everyone is using them. So access anomaly here is kind of hard. So if you, let's say, you create an alert or a signal only on this ASNs, you're going to be swamped with false positives. So now they are just switching to really common ASNs to just trick the defenders. Again, quick overview. Main access, going through the IDP, using the social engineering to help desk to get the initial access, moving down to your SaaS tools to just do reconnaissance and find how they can get on-prem. Mostly it has happened via the Azure Virtual Desktop. VPN is also something which is known to be used into getting on-prem. As soon as they fall on-prem, they have ESXi, vSphere, domain controllers just sitting there, and the damage sprawl is really worse. So it's really easy for them, even avoiding like EDR detection, because what they are doing is they find your VM, they just pause the VM, they will mount the NTDS file into their own infrastructure, and they will carve all the files that they need to carry out their mission. And the last thing, which is really interesting, is that during the recent engagements, we saw that the activity in the data lake service, so Snowflake and Databricks, these guys love these environments too. And again, we have a more detailed slide, which just shows how they have evolved the way of attacking this data lake services. Okay, let's talk about the interesting thing, which is how they're managing to trick the help desk guy into actually resetting their password. Now, something to consider is that they're not straight out calling the help desk and saying, hello, I forgot my password, can you help me out? No. They're going to the Microsoft Reset Password page. They will type out your email or username of your CFO or their target. From a detection stance, this is the actual event name which is going to be called, is the reset flow activity progress, and it says that user submitted their user ID, and obviously finding the email of you or username of the target is pretty much easy. Next, they will be prompted with a verification options, and now it varies. In here we see that it says that you can text my mobile phone number, you can call my mobile phone number, you can do that through the authentication, getting a notification prompt, or like just putting the code. What they're doing here is that they're not just trying to put random numbers. They're not trying to brute force the authenticator app or like just do MFA push bombing, even though that has been a common thing on their previous intrusions. No, they're just staying there, and they will call the help desk guy. And another interesting thing, is that Microsoft, for some reasons, decides to display the last 2 digits of your number. And let's say if an attacker has about 20 or 34 numbers, potential phone numbers of your CFO or your IT admin, and they would like to narrow down and find the actual phone number, the Microsoft might give them a nice hint of those 2 last digit numbers. Of course, there are other ways how to do this, but that was just something interesting to mention. So, as soon as they do that, they will call the help desk guy and say, hello, my name is Tom CFO. I forgot my password. Can you help me out reset it? And sometimes it doesn't work. So they will switch to the next IT help desk guy and the next IT. So they are doing this, they are being persistent. And they will come prepared. They will probably know your employee ID. They will probably know your middle name, your surname, your birthday. So they are prepared. They're doing their reconnaissance of their target before going in there. And after 2 or 3 calls, they will say, okay, the IT help desk guy, the weakest chain of the link, will say, okay, here you go, Tom. We have resetted your password. You probably don't have access to your MFA because obviously you couldn't reset your own password. And here you go. I will delete your old security info, and I'm going to give you the possibility of enrolling a new MFA device. And the attacker does that, and after it's a piece of cake for them. From a detection stance over here, what's interesting is that this is not odd. People forget their passwords, they lose their MFA devices, and if you are just doing detection in a huge corporate, like doing an alert for each time an admin is deleting a security info or is resetting a password could be noisy. Now, what these attackers, or what we've seen in recent engagements, is that the timeline between when the reset flow is called and when these attackers call the IT help desk guy is less than 5 minutes. So, and that's odd for a normal user, because if you're a normal user, you forgot your password, you will go ahead and try to remember it. If you don't, you will go to reset password page, you get prompted with the verification options, you will see if your number is listed there. If not, you will try your your MFA device. So it takes more than 5 minutes. But these guys they know that they don't have the password, they know that they are not the legitimate user, so they are straight out calling the help desk team. So if all those things just these puzzles start to fit, then you have probably something interesting. So you can find an onboardable thing. How they're doing the reconnaissance in the SaaS application. Now I think that SaaS is one of the most underrepresented areas for doing threat detections. And I get why. Not all SaaS applications are the same. Some of them log horribly. In some of them, it's really hard even exporting the logs to view them. Or on a recent case like Salesforce, where you have to actually pay 10% of what you pay Salesforce as a whole to even get the event monitoring feature. And all of these things just adding up, it tells you that you can have a nice reasons why you're not looking at these logs. But as soon as you do, you're going to find a lot of interesting stuff from these threat actors, but even insider threat activity. Or if you're into the latest like DPRK IT workers stuff, like just searching through the SaaS logs is the way to go. But for this group, again, what I'd like to do is go into your SaaS application like SharePoint, Jira, Slack, and they will type out the exact search term that they need. And the good thing about search terms is that they show intention. Now, if I have a user who is searching for AKIA, in a SharePoint doc, I know that they are going after some long-term access keys on AWS. Or if they are going after AVD, VDO, VDI, vSphere, they know that they are using for the virtualization, for virtualization tools. So again, I've displayed over here some of the most known search terms that this group is using. And again, this is for their own purpose of getting onto prem as soon as possible. One thing interesting here is that not all SaaS applications or not all SaaS apps have logging by default. Now SharePoint has their the logging enabled by default, but let's say attackers now are also doing search terms in Outlook, and that's not enabled by default. So you need to enable it by default. You can enable it on your whole organization or for certain mailbox if they're on your identity watch list, but these are some of the challenges you will face working with SaaS application logs. I mentioned Snowflake. Let's talk about it. Again, Snowflake is a data log service, and it's not the first time that they are abusing it. But later like a year ago or 2 years ago, detection on Snowflake was kind of boring, and I'll tell you why. What they were doing is just creating queries like select all from a certain database. They were copying into their external stage, so it was pretty easy to, let's say, detect that. So it wasn't that they were doing some complex queries, so you can find out. But they are doing it now. So usually they go through the federated access, so they establish access via valid identity, and for some companies who actually like enforce tight access controls, they say, okay, they say to the developers, in order to connect to the Snowflake, you need to go through the VPN, and that's totally fine. Again, what the attackers did, what Looker 3 did, is search for VPN docs, and they know how to get in on the Snowflake. Once they do that, it's a fresh environment for them. They want to know who the administrator are, what kind of role does that identity have, what are the interesting tables for them to just carve out the files, and they will do that on the reconnaissance phase. And going now to the authorization probing, or to the most complex thing, is that instead of now using the select all from this database, they're actually creating procedures. Now, with procedures, you can also use other languages like JavaScript. And another good thing with procedure is that it helped them during their attack. So instead of just copy-pasting large queries to get the data out of them, they will just call it the procedure and carry out their mission. And frankly speaking, on recent engagements, companies were not prepared with the detection they needed, because of course now they were only creating detections around, let's say, the SQL query syntax or the Snowflake query syntax, and not the JavaScript, so it was easy to bypass that part. Next, companies are again really good at implementing access controls, egress controls, but they are not really good at monitoring them. Okay, now the mission of the attacker on Snowflake is just get and export what they need from the database, tables, whatever they need. And the way to go is just export them into an external stage. So they will export them to an S3 bucket, to an Azure blob, wherever their own infrastructure is. But now they are prompted with an error which says that you are not enabled to create direct URL exports. Okay, that was enforced. What the attacker did, say, okay, can I actually just set that to false so it doesn't work? And eventually they did. They had the permission to do that. And once they do that, they can also use the other loosen stage governance, which actually also disables them from copying the data to an external stage. They just set them all to false, and from now on, they can just sit tight and enjoy the show by just exporting all the Snowflake data into their own environment. On-prem pivot. Again, what's interesting about these guys is not just the way they attack, but the speed of it. Now, on recent engagements, they have been going from the initial access into on-prem in hours. So from getting like within hours of initial access, they just went on-prem and carry out their mission. So the initial access through an IDP layer, just searching for knowledge which are stored on the SharePoint or OneDrive. Most of it was connecting to a VPN or the Azure Virtual Desktop. They go into their on-prem activity, and from there on, they were carrying out their mission. And again, it depends who the target is. The missions might be credential harvesting, ransomware deployment. On the most recent cases, it was disruption of service. Once they're getting on-prem, again, interesting thing, or what we saw was that during the remediation phase for some of these attacks, when the remediation team was actually, let's say, deleting an account or a backdoor user or a setting that the attackers did on Entra ID in cloud, what the user were doing was that they'd done the same thing on AD on-prem. So using the AD sync, those changes were getting synced again on cloud, so it was just something persistent popping off. Again, we don't know if that was something intentional by them, but if they did, kudos to them, because it was really interesting and funny just seeing that. Okay, I'm going to go quick on this one. AWS is not a new thing for them. This is more of previous intrusions. What they like to do is carry out their mission through the management console. During last year, it was an indicator of us saying, like, okay, these guys might not be as advanced as we think they are in terms of using the CLI. They might be using the management console because, frankly speaking, it's easier to use the UI interface, or they have some kind of playbook saying, like, okay, click this, so someone gave it to them. S3 browser is another clear indicator that they have used in recent attacks. So S3 browser is a thick client you can download on Windows, where you can just interact with the S3 service in AWS. Credential harvesting was always an interesting thing, disabling guard duty, any forms of logging on AWS, S3 data theft, and from a hunting perspective, again, doing some baselining on your activity with S3 browser usage. If that certain user has never used S3 browser and he suddenly started doing that, it's a nice thing to check. Checking for any policy creation where they're using the asterisk sign to give them root privileges. Secrets manager via Cloud Shell is definitely something that they have been known doing it. Next, tooling to help. More than a year ago, I've open sourced Cloud Grappler, which is an open source threat detection tool for cloud environments. It's really easy to use. It has about 170 TPs from various threat actors, the Shiny Hunters, Team TNT, Looker 3, and currently it supports some of the most major cloud service provider, AWS, Azure, GCP, and Salesforce, and we keep it updated from time to time. And it's pretty easy to use. You just specify where you're keeping your logs, whether that will be in your S3 bucket, on your container on Azure, and it will map out immediately your own, and you'll find if there's any suspicious activity known to these threat actors. Last but not least, Cloud Console Cartographer is another open source tool which I developed with my manager, Daniel Bohannon, and we presented it last year in Black Hat Asia. Now this tool, what it actually does is a visibility framework tool on the AWS console. Each time the attacker or the normal user logs in or clicks the EC2 instance, any service, it generates a whole bunch of API calls in the back. So let's say if your user just created another role, assigned a policy to it, created an EC2 instance, that will generate 300, 400, 500 of events, or by using this tool, it will condense them and it will map them to actual clicks. So it's the user logged into AWS console, they visited the console home. So instead of having 400 or 500 of API calls on your SIEM, you can actually just see it condense them to, let's say, 5, 7, or 10 clicks. Okay, I think I'm on time. Yeah, thanks for your time. I hope this has been... Okay, come on, man. Informational.
talk. Maybe we have time for one very short question. Do we have something in the audience? Otherwise, you are around, right? You're still at the
Huh?
You're still around.
Yeah, I'm still around. You can reach out to me on any social media, or we can just have a chat after the conference.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, then let's do it like this. Thank you.